Yeah. Cam Akers ended up tearing his Achilles. Great. I mean, not only is that terrible for him, of course, as a young running back, not only is that a brutal injury to begin with, one of the worst injuries you can potentially have as any player, although modern day medicine makes it fine. I'm not too worried about Cam Akers, especially given his age, second-year player, right? Coming out of Florida State. But this is brutal. It's also brutal for myself. Let's get selfish for a second here. We had a video on Daryl Henderson coming out last week as a late-round running back. He's now going to be an early round running back. Yes, not first round. Potentially finds his way into the second round at points, and definitely third and fourth round running back at some point. So right now, draft as much Daryl Henderson as you can. And that could change if they make a trade. But even if they make a signing, it's probably not going to change that much. Who are they going to sign? Le'Veon Bell? Oh, yeah. We're worried about Le'Veon Bell, right? Frank Gore, right? TJ Yeldon. Who's on the free agency market? I'm not too worried, especially when you factor in that Malcolm Brown is now gone from this backfield. So let's discuss this. Let's discuss this because Daryl Henderson is now in potential RB2 for sure, probably right around that RB2 range, but the upside of an RB1. I mean, Cam Akers was being taken often as a top 6, 7, 8 running back off the board, a first-round pick in the far majority of drafts this offseason on Underdog based on his ADP. So you throw Daryl Henderson in there, and people might be saying, Daryl Henderson, he stinks. If you look closely at what Daryl Henderson has done in his career in loaded backfields with the Rams, his short 2-year career, he's actually been quite decent. He was an above average prospect coming out, 80th percentile 40 times, 75th percentile speed. The one thing he didn't have was much burst, but he was able to catch passes. He showed some ability in college at Memphis to catch passes. 63 college receptions in 38 games. It's pretty damn good. He saw a 5.4% and then 7.4% target share in college. Now, if you want to be that elite running back, you see the 10+% target shares, but a 7% target share in college to end his career was pretty solid. Now, last year with Cam Akers there, he started off as the running back. He had a deal with Malcolm Brown, and Akers got hurt earlier in the season, but he saw a 33% share of the snaps, a 38% opportunity share, and he was a quality running back. Look, he didn't run a lot of routes per week because Malcolm Brown was there. They didn't throw to running backs as much as when Todd Gurley was there, and then Cam Akers came during the end of the year. Only 9 routes run per week, but he was pretty impressive. He was the number 25 running back, and this is just being part of the backfield. In yards per touch, that's 5.1, right, from an efficiency standpoint. He had 138 carries on the ground. He ended up averaging a top 34.3 yards per carry, 5.3 yards per touch, and he was number 37 in yards created per touch amongst all running backs. And those are not elite numbers. Those are solid numbers and probably better than you thought. Top 25, top 30 in a lot of those areas is pretty good, especially when you factor in the limited touches that he had. Now, I'm not expecting him to be this elite pass catcher. He showed decent abilities in college and decent abilities in the NFL. He only saw 4.7% target share. 16 routes run was the most that he saw last year, but he might be forced into that role. Now, the depth chart for this team, it goes from not now having no Cam Akers to not having much at all back there. It's Daryl Henderson by far and away number 1, right, in terms of draft capital. Raymond Calais, who was a former pick by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe, last year. He was a 2020 7th-round pick out of Louisiana Lafayette. 4 active games last year, saw 0 touches, meaning that he was a depth piece or more likely played some special teams. Outside of that, you have an undrafted free agent who was already 25 years old in Xavier Jones. I believe he was with the Cowboys for a little bit of time. He is out of SMU. He has been active for 3 games in his career, 0 touches. So the backfield, the 2 best running backs right now behind Daryl Henderson, have 0 touches in the NFL. That is going to translate. That is going to translate to a lot of work for Daryl Henderson, and obviously they're probably going to sign somebody. But if you look at the market right now, the TJ Yeldons, the Frank Gores, the Le'Veon Bells, the Adrian Petersons, who's probably the leading candidate in my opinion, don't really worry me that much. I mean, Adrian Peterson probably worries me the most as like a 36-year-old running back now, and what's that going to lead to? He's not as good as Daryl Henderson. It probably leads to 4 to 6 to 8 touches per game at most. Daryl Henderson right now, as it stands with this depth chart behind him, as it stands right now, if he remains healthy for a 17-game season, is going to come in as a top 15 running back in my rankings, is going to push towards a top 12 running back. Yes, he will be right there around Najee Harris and Antonio Gibson because that's the same role that he's in. Elite offensive line, a quality offense with now a good quarterback and a great defense. And he can catch some passes, and he has no backfield competition. Isn't that why we all like Najee Harris, except, Najee Harris doesn't have an offensive line and doesn't have a great quarterback like he has? This is a really good spot for Daryl Henderson. It depends on who they bring in. Daryl Henderson will only drop down for me depending on who they bring in. If they bring in a quality running back or a couple of them, I mean, Le'Veon Bell's not really scaring me, but if they find somebody, if they trade for James Robinson, let's throw something out there, right? If they trade for James Robinson or somebody else, and he's going to drop. Yes, he's going to drop into the RB20s, the 30s range, somewhere around there for me. But right now, as it stands, borderline top 15 back. That might sound crazy. That might blow your mind. But you were just drafting Cam Akers as a top 8, top 6, maybe even top 5 running back in your drafts. And there is most definitely a skill gap from Cam Akers to Daryl Henderson. But it is not that large. It is not insanely large. It is about 10 to 12 draft picks difference. borderline top 15 running back right now, Daryl Henderson. And last year, we could look at the splits. I'll pop them up on the screen last year. The first 8 games versus the last 7 games. This was when Cam Akers was banged up. This was when Henderson was seeing more work. And this was with Malcolm Brown there. Malcolm Brown, who saw 43% of the snaps and 30% of the opportunities last year. You saw 11.5 fantasy points per game, as you can see on the screen right now, compared to 5.5. So 6 more fantasy points per game without Cam Akers there, and that's with Malcolm Brown in the backfield. You saw a difference in rushing yards of 34 rushing yards per game. That's massive, and the rushing attempts ended up going up by about double. He almost doubled his rushing attempts. So clearly he's going to see a lot more work. Now no Malcolm Brown, who last year was seeing 8.4 opportunities per game and 21 red zone touches, 5 total touchdowns, is now gone. So the 2 running backs that were there last year, who made up 43% and 35% of the backfield, now gone, and it's just Daryl Henderson. So obviously a fantastic situation for him. He is going to be a very good running back until they add somebody. They will add somebody, and if they don't, then it looks like the Mike Davis situation. Look at Mike Davis in Atlanta right now. They don't have anybody in the backfield behind there. He's being drafted often as the RB18 to RB22, depending on the draft that you're in. That is where Henderson's going to be, except better. Why? Because he has a better offensive line, he has a better quarterback, and he has a better defense than what Atlanta is giving Mike Davis. So Daryl Henderson, get used to it. He's definitely an RB2 as it stands right now, and he's getting close to being an RB1 at this point, which just sounds crazy in the middle of July. That's the instant reaction right now on Daryl Henderson and this Cam Akers news. Very sad for Cam Akers, but if you want to see all the ranks, want to see them updated depending on who they bring in, get the Supreme Draft Kit, Supreme Draft Guide down below right now as it lasts for free. Limited time offer right now. Like and subscribe before you bounce, and I'll see you all in the next one.